When trying to find x when solving algebraic equations, the most important thing to think about are our inverse operations. So what does inverse mean? It basically means the opposite. So if you've got something where it says plus, the opposite of that is minus, and vice versa. So the opposite or inverse of minus is plus. So if ever you see a minus sign, you do a plus. If ever you see a plus sign, you do a minus. The same applies for when you've got multiplication. The inverse of multiplication is divide, and the inverse of divide is multiplication. So I'm going to leave that in a little bubble at the top here because that's going to become really important throughout this video. So let's have a look at number 1 over here. Our aim is to get the letter all by itself. So we need to use the inverse operations, which we've talked about earlier in this video up here, in order to get the a by itself. So let's start with our minus 2. We want to move that minus 2 over onto the other side. So it needs to start here and go over here. So in order to do that, we've got to the inverse of minus, which is plus. So in brackets underneath, I'm going to write plus 2 on both sides. It's really important you do it on both sides of the equation each time, because that means that we're now left with 3a on the left equals 9. Now, between the 3 and the a, there's a miniature multiplication sign, which we don't really write. But because there is this mini multiplication sign, the inverse of that is division. So in order to get our a by itself, which is our ultimate aim, we need to do the inverse of multiplication, which is divide. So we're going to divide by 3. And it's important that you write this on both sides just to make it really clear what's going on. So that leaves us with a equals 9 divided by 3, which is 3. So our answer to this one is a equals 3. When it comes to the next equation, number 2 over here, it's exactly the same principles. So at the moment, we've got ourselves divide by 4 at the bottom. So in order to get rid of that divide by 4, again, we go up to our little bubble in the top left corner and we do the inverse of division. So it's currently divide by 4, so we've got to multiply both sides by 4. So again, I'm putting the multiplication sign in brackets underneath both sides. So that means that we're left with 7c plus 13 equals 12 times by 4, which is 48. Now, this next bit looks a lot more like our original equation in question 1. So now we need to think about what's the next thing to do to try and get the c by itself. So currently we've got plus 13, so we'll do the opposite. So we'll do minus 13 on both sides. So if you've got minus 13 on both sides, that leaves us with 7c equals 35. Now again, as I talked about earlier, there's a mini multiplication sign between the 7 and the c. So because there's that multiplication sign, we have to do the opposite, which is divide. So we're dividing by 7 on both sides, as you can see here, which again leaves us with c equals 35 divided by 7, which is 5. Now you can pause the video here and have a little go on the green questions on the right hand side, and then I'll go through the answers in a moment. Okay, so for this one, number 1 on the green questions here, I'm going to write a little bit smaller so we can go through it a little bit easier. So we've got 4a plus 3. First thing to do is we want to get rid of that plus 3 by doing the opposite. So we're minusing 3 from both sides, which leaves us with 4a equals 24. Now we've got the 4 times by the a, so again, use our inverse operations. So we divide by 4 on both sides. Now, I always say to my students, it's really important to make sure it's really clear in algebra that you're showing your workings each step of the way. Because if you're not showing these workings each step of the way, if you make a mistake early on, you're going to end up with 0 marks out of, say, a 3 or 4 mark question instead of 2 or 3 marks. So here we're divided by the 4, which leaves us with a equals 24 divided by 4, which is 6. Now, I've not left myself much space for this this second question, so I'm going to write quite small here. So here we're divided by 3, so this time we're going to times by 3 on both sides, which leaves us with 2c minus 1 equals 21. Now we want to move this 1 over by doing the inverse, so plussing 1 on both sides, which leaves us with 2c equals 22. And now we're dividing by 2 on both sides, which leaves us with c equals 11. I hope this was useful, and just remember it's all about showing workings really, really clearly and using those inverse operations.